It's been a quiet week at Cedar Lakes, here on the edge of scenic Ripley, West Virginia. The ducks and geese have finally settled into their fourth week of relative harmony, following the noisy post-migratory aquatic fowl territorial dispute from April. The Webfoot Wars, as they're called, they're an annual tradition for the area, and they could go on for weeks and cost the lives of many a bird. This year, however, a peace accord was skillfully negotiated by a group of squirrels, who decided that when it came to having their springtime scampering disturbed by the constant cacophony of quacking, honking, and the gnashing of beaks, they'd had a fluffy-tailed axe full. Under the terms of this accord, the geese were given exclusive use of the two lakes by the dining hall, while the ducks were given the use of the smaller lake with the covered bridge, which the ducks gladly agreed to as it's more scenic and attractive to red bag-bearing pedestrians. The two flocks agreed to share the central lake, with the ducks restricting themselves to the western end of it and the geese to the eastern end. The causeway, walking path, serving as the natural line of territorial demarcation for them. Walking path crapping duties were divided by the two sides on a tightly regimented schedule to be fairly monitored by the frogs. All this is to say that the lake itself was relatively peaceful for the groundbreaking ceremony of the much-needed renovation of our organization's former executive lounge, located in the fabled subterranean chamber beneath the big wooden thing in the middle of the lake. The lounge was originally constructed by former President Faye Thompson in 2002, or at least that's what she claims. Some have speculated that she simply rediscovered an existing subterranean lair and that its origins are far more arcane. Whatever the case, its purpose for most of the past decade has been to serve as a place of well-deserved relaxation for the former presidents of West Virginia writers, a place where the emeriti could kick back, enjoy an adult beverage if they so chose, and finally get to writing some of those stories and poems they've been too busy to get to as president. The renovations came about after outgoing President Terry McNeamer was granted an end-of-term preview tour late last week. What he saw there made his contractor's heart sink. Under the dim glow of flickering emergency lights, Terry could see the place had gone to shambles. While the Cedar Lakes housekeepers' strike from last July had been settled amicably, again through the intervention of the squirrels, one of the clauses in their new contract stated that the cleaning of the lounge was no longer their responsibility. In the intervening months, the patio burrito and Hot Pocket wrappers had really begun to pile up. Back issues of Writer's Digest heated dangerously on towering stacks, their structural integrity held in place only by similar stacks of old West Virginia Writers newsletters that had fallen against them. And most of these were soaked through from the 1.5 foot of stagnant water that had collected during the ice melt runoff from the flood of 2010 in the Great Winter. Well, that and the fact that it was a subterranean chamber on the edge of a lake. This was not at all what Terry had been promised for all his hard work, but in some ways he was relieved. Every year in recent memory, a major crisis has hit just days before the conference, causing chaos to briefly reign until backup plans can be enacted. Sometimes it was the cancellation of a single workshop presenter. Sometimes it was a tornado destroying the air conditioning system of the cafeteria just in time for the banquet ceremony. Sometimes it was the assembly hall being struck by lightning. A trash lounge was the kind of crisis Terry could handle. He set about calling in favors from his construction industry buddies, and before long the renovations had begun. The lounge would be sump pumped, shored up, sandblasted clean, and retrofitted for modern amenities. Terry stayed at Cedar Lakes to oversee the renovations. On Monday, he was just wrapping up negotiations for a remote-controlled auto-flush bidet when several truly horrifying calls came through. He instantly knew the annual crisis had not been averted. He found Eric and Sandy sipping boat drinks and basking in the sun by the covered bridge. He announced to them that the conference was screwed and he was headed to Mexico. Can't be all that bad, Eric said. What's up? All the presenters have canceled. All of them? Except the two of you, every last one. But they can't do that, Sandy said. I mean, what would make every presenter cancel at the same time? They all say they're too busy to come, Terry said. Busy? Doing what? Eric said. Terry nearly spat in disgust. Writing damn angsty teenage vampire YA fiction. Oh, Sandy and Eric said in unison. Now it made sense. Writers around the state and beyond had been monitoring the swelling market for angsty teenage vampire YA fiction for the past couple of years. They were waiting for the twilight bubble to finally burst so that readers would again be free to return to reading stories featuring the kind of true-to-life Appalachian characters who struggled against real struggles and didn't just walk around looking chiseled, brooding, and shirtless all day. The barely spoken hope among writers was that Jeanette Walls had another tragic childhood book in her to pull more attention in our direction. But the teen empire trend just wouldn't end. The books became more popular by the day, then were turned into movies, which just fed the audience for the books, and more movies, and copycat stories, and copies of copies, and movies of copies of copies. Everyone was making money on angsty teenage vampire YA crap. And at long last, the West Virginia writing community had had enough. They'd collectively decided that if you can't beat them, write your own, and everyone was joining in. Even Jeanette Walls, who, as Terry explained, had just closed a deal to write Glass Castle Dracula. How about Melinda Anderson, Sandy asked. She's supposed to be the new parliamentarian. She wouldn't bail on us. No, Terry said dismally. She just started on a collection of YA short fiction called The Neck Ain't Dry Yet. Terry went on to inform them that presenter Pam Hansen was off writing Christian vampire romance fiction. Brad Barkley was halfway through Allison's vampire hunting manual. Denise Giardina had retooled her second Bronte sister novel, which was now retitled Charlotte's Ghoul. Cheryl Ware was working on Vanilla Mae Cutright, Batty Cornered. And Gretchen Moran Laskus was under a hard deadline for the first part of a trilogy entitled The Vampire's Daughter. Eric nearly spilled his boat drink. But Gretchen was already supposed to fill in for Lee Maynard after he had to cancel. Then all three of them immediately and silently remembered that Lee's last book was called The Pale Light of Sunset, which they each realized was just another way to say, never mind. Well, what about the poets, Sandy asked, changing the subject. They all canceled too, Terry said. It seems teenage girls already love dark, gloomy poetry, so they think they've cornered the crossover market. Well, crap on a cracker, Sandy said. We're going to have to find a super big name West Virginia author to make up for the presenters we've lost at this conference. It's going to be a bust. I've called everybody, Terry said. Stephen Kuntz, Sharon McCrum, Henry Louis Gates Jr., Ann Pancake, Betsy Byers, Anna Smucker. They're all either book scholar or writing vampire YA fiction. I even called Chuck Kinder, but he's still working on his Teenage Wizard book. There's got to be someone left with name recognition, Eric said. I mean, who's the biggest West Virginia writer that we can even claim? They thought about it. They thought about it some more. Pearl S. Buck, a squirrel said, passing by. Everybody knows that. Yeah, but she's dead, Terry said. The squirrel shrugged and scampered away. Wait a second, Terry said. That squirrel has a point. Why not Pearl S. Buck? You already said it. She's been dead for nearly 40 years, Sandy said. And she was 81 when she died. Well, I know that, and you know that. But does everybody else know that? Terry explained that most West Virginians probably knew Pearl S. Buck was a famous author. Some might even know she was on the literary map. Some might know she was both a Nobel laureate and Pulitzer Prize winner. Some might know she spent much of her life in China. Some near her birthplace in Hillsborough might even know that she was dead. But would most people know all of that? Terry was guessing that even among the writer community, people might, just might, be hard-pressed to tell you the name of one of her books, let alone her status among the living. For all most people knew, she was a famous writer from West Virginia who liked to write historical fiction set in China. Terry laughed. Slap a wig and a dress on someone, have them do a couple of workshops a day, and we'll be fine. We keep those classrooms hot enough and dim enough, nobody's going to pay attention to the details. It's not the worst idea I've ever heard, Eric said. So who are we going to get to play Pearl S. Buck? Sandy asked. Who else? Terry said. Our new president, Kat Plaska. She can do anything. Yeah, Eric said. And if anyone calls us out on it, we'll tell them she's just doing one of her historical characters. Brilliant. As they walked away from the covered bridge, minding the duck who as they went, Sandy turned to them and asked, what sort of workshop will we have Pearl S. Buck teach? Terry gave it a moment's thought. How to write angsty teenage vampire. We'll have attendance numbers for the record books for sure. Done and done, Eric said. And so that's exactly what they did. And that's the news from Cedar Lakes. For the men are men, the women